Hi everyone, welcome inside Mullet Arena for the Sun Devil Source Series recap. I'm Gabby Chernoff, Jake Sloan. We're here following ASU getting swept by number 4 North Dakota Friday by a score of 7-4, and tonight lost 5-3. And Jake, this was already a tall task, very difficult weekend at hand. North Dakota is one of, if not the deepest teams in the country, and they really came into Mullet and showed why tonight.
Yeah, I mean, a plethora of NHL draft picks up and down this roster, and any type of depth that ASU had coming into this, they just can compete with the type of depth that North Dakota had from top to bottom. They had scoring chances on every single line from their defensemen as well. It was just a very tall task, like you said, going into the weekend, and it became an even taller one with how well all of North Dakota's lines were just meshing together, all on the same page with their passing, setting up plenty of scoring opportunities for them.
Yeah, and it was really very evident. I mean, you talk about like the eye test in sports. North Dakota just seemed they were playing with a lot more togetherness. It seemed like you were hearing that puck hitting the sticks a lot more often and a lot cleaner than what was happening for ASU. North Dakota's very disruptive defensively with their sticks. But to your point about Cullen Potter and Jack Beck out for the season, those are two of ASU's top 6 forwards. So going into this weekend, you already have a top 5 team, number 4 North Dakota coming in. You're in kind of a funky spot in the pairwise, or the NPI, so it's called now. They were number 24 heading into the weekend. They've dropped since getting swept at home to number 28. So what kind of position does that put ASU in going forward?
Yeah, I mean, when you lose someone like Potter, who's averaging over a point per game, you need to have offensive production somewhere else. And they, in a sense, did have that this weekend. All 7 goals that they scored with combined Friday and Saturday came from 7 different players, 3 of them on the back end with your defensemen. So they had that offensive production that can kind of hint towards their ability to pick up what they left behind with Potter and Beck being out for the season. But a lot of it just comes on the defense. They had the offensive answer for a team that gives up just over 2 goals per game, but it was on the defensive side where there were too many lapses. Last night, Powers alluded to, there were too many times where ASU left goaltender Connor Hasley out to dry, as he put it. Too many times they got caught puck watching. UND was able to sneak a couple forwards behind them for easy tap-in goals. And it was kind of similar tonight in that third period, but it started in the second period with just over 30 seconds left in the second period. ASU turned it over in their own zone. Andrew Strothman for UND scored a goal to make it 3-2, and that just completely tilted the ice in North Dakota's favor, and they took it all the way into the third period with that offensive onslaught.
Yeah, and just to kind of put this comparison into perspective, North Dakota, I mean, we harp on the depth like a broken record, but they have 4 complete forward lines that can all score, and all of their defensemen can score as well. Greg Powers has, acknowledged in the fact when talking about the 4th line, sometimes he shortens his bench in those kind of crunch time scenarios because he said we needed to get some scoring, and he said when talking about those guys on the 4th line, when they go out there, they know their job isn't to score. So it kind of puts into perspective these kind of big behemoth teams in the NCAA that have that kind of depth for full scoring lines. That's where the matchup kind of tilts, gets uneven on an offensive standpoint when ASU doesn't have those 4 lines that can all score, and the coaches, when he needs that, having to shorten the bench, and then players, that can lead to them getting gassed. And Power said his players were gassed tonight, but for a different reason. The number of penalties, ASU took 8 penalties in each game against North Dakota. Last night on Friday, he said, we really need to, get those penalties dwindled down and the kind of calls that we don't really need to be taking. North Dakota had 10 penalties last night, but they were able to fix that, translate it into just 4 tonight, I believe. And so, I mean, Cruz Lucius, Greg Powers, and Bennett Shimmick both talked, or all 3 of them talked about how difficult it is to play when you're trying to kill like that.
Yeah, and especially when you're going up against a team like North Dakota, who's the 3rd best power play in the nation. They held them to 1 for 4 last night, but tonight they weren't as fortunate, 2 for 4, and those ended up being the difference in the game. Especially the timeliness of those goals really helped North Dakota build that momentum that allowed them to have that third period where they scored 3 goals, completely took ASU out of the game. And the crowd that North Dakota came with also helps take ASU out of the game. We saw a lot of Kelly Green at Mullet Arena this weekend, and there was a bit of a block party for North Dakota, so I've heard. And For a team out of Grand Forks, North Dakota, they travel extremely well no matter where their team goes, and that was very evident this weekend.
Yeah, the North Dakota known for having fans that travel great. I mean, there's no pro sports up there. That's all you got. So they traveled well, and I'm sure it was nice to be in the 65, 70 degree Tempe weather when it's negative something up there. But you could, to the point of getting gassed, you could feel it. Like ASU was up 3-1 at one point, and then lets up a goal in the last 30 seconds of the second period, and in the first minute of the third period, North Dakota ties the game, and they all talked about kind of those momentum swings and how gutting that can be.
Yeah, and Greg Powers said this felt exactly like the Penn State series where they held leads going into both of those games against a top 10 team in the country at home, and they gave up 4 goals each to lose those games. So it was just absolute killers in terms of their momentum, and that was exactly how it felt for them here tonight with that third period where they gave up 3 goals. And that's just kind of what happens when you have a roster with 17 newcomers, 11 freshmen. Obviously, the first series of your season, you can kind of brush that off. But when you're in the second to last week of January, you really feel like you should have that type of camaraderie where you don't stack bad shifts. You can kind of brush off a goal and get your team back into it. But that's just not what ASU was able to do tonight, and their youth and their inexperience kind of showed through tonight.
And it's always going to catch up to you. I mean, Samuel Urban was standing on his head in that ASU was being outshot by double, I think, from maybe the 5 minutes into the first period for virtually the rest of the game. They were up 3-1 at one point, but eventually that's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, and that was just the shots on goal. Their shot attempts, they were nearly tripled. ASU had 29 shot attempts, UND had 73. So it was just the amount of shots that Urban was facing. It was almost like he could bend but not break, but only up to a certain point. And with how many shots that UND had on him, with the pressure that they had in the offensive zone, even when they weren't having shots on goal, the amount of opportunities they had, it seemed like there was only a matter of time before the Fighting Hawks were able to finally get through to Urban, and that's exactly what they did in that final 20 minutes.
Well, Dane Jackson, North Dakota's head coach, talked about it after the game tonight. He said, our ability to kind of wear teams down with our depth is what's led to so much success for them. North Dakota's goal differential in the third period is plus 26, so tonight's game and comeback win was just kind of another one of those games for North Dakota. So ASU gets swept this weekend, but 5 weeks left in the regular season before conference playoffs, and then if they make it, the NCAA tournament starts. So Jake, what do the last 5 weeks look like for ASU, and what are they going to need to do to get in some better standings in that NPI?
Yeah, these last 3 weeks almost feel like a missed opportunity for ASU. They come into January going from number 44 to number 24, and the NPI from mid-November to mid-December after beating a couple top 10 teams on the road. And then they have a 6-game homestand where they feel like they can really start to make some strides towards the upper teens, the mid-teens, where the teams are on the bubble for an NCAA tournament berth. The first 2 games for the Desert Hockey Classic, they sweep, no problem, but then they split against Miami, and they get swept here against North Dakota. Powers said that he feels like they had a shot to go 4-2, maybe even 5-1 if that loss to Miami and the loss tonight were to go the other way. And now when you look ahead, 2 top 10 teams on the road, 2 of your final 4 series of the season. They head to Colorado College next week, which is a team that came into Mold Arena, tied the first game, and then beat ASU the second game, bottom of the NCHC standings, so not the best look for them record-wise, but in terms of those final 2 games against Denver and Western Michigan, both top 10 teams, those are 2 of the hardest arenas to play in college hockey, period, not just the NCHC. So ASU has really dug itself in a hole when they had an opportunity to make a bigger jump, and now falling from number 24 to currently number 29 as it currently stands, barring the rest of the results from tonight's games. It seems like a missed opportunity for ASU to really make some damage, and now they have to play pickup for the rest of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the tournament situation for ASU, it's 6 years in a row now of just being on the outside of the bubble. And the big thing when entering a conference, when they joined the NCHC last year, was it becomes, so much easier to be able to make an appearance in the NCAA tournament. You have that auto bid from the conference champion. When you play in a conference, the teams are a little bit tougher, so it's easier to kind of boost your resume, and that really just hasn't been the case.
Yeah, and we saw that last year when ASU was teeter-tottering before a first and second seed, kind of going back and forth with Western Michigan. They end up with the second seed, but because of a couple key losses down the stretch in February, the loss in the Frozen Four semifinals to Denver keeps them on the outside looking in by just a couple spots. I think they were the first or second team to just barely miss the cut. And the way that they're trending right now with these third period collapses, they might not even get to that point. So this upcoming weekend with a road test against an NCHC opponent, nonetheless, no matter where they are in the conference, is always going to be a test. Multiple times, powers and players have said that you cannot take a single weekend off. Every single game is a battle. This will be a very good barometer to see where ASU is heading into February and whether or not they can still make a push for the postseason.
Well, ASU dropped to 5-8-1 in conference play after the loss tonight, and below 500 overall. They're 12-13-1, sixth in the NCHC standings, and just 2 points out of last place in those conference standings. Greg Powers, media availability, open practice will be there, have you covered this Tuesday, and then on the road against Colorado College, playing the Tigers for the second time this season. We'll have you covered throughout the week and this weekend as well. Thank you for watching. From Mullet Arena, Gabby Chernoff and Jake Sloan, this has been the Sun Devil Source Series Recap.